Oh, you've reached Gloria with Homestead Talk, and I'm here today with Dee Porter. And Dee is with the Porter Homestead. Welcome, Dee, and thank you for joining me on this interview this afternoon.
Thank you.
Oh, great to have you. So, would you go ahead and inform the viewers where they can find you on social media?
So at this point, we are just on Instagram as the Porter Homestead. We've talked about doing like a blog, some sort of, but that we haven't gotten that far yet. So just right now, we're just on Instagram.
Okay, great. So, Dee, if you would tell me a little bit about where you're living currently and a little bit about your family dynamics.
So my husband and I just bought our homestead last December. So we've been here a little less than a year. We have 7 acres and we live in central New York, about half an hour west of Syracuse. So most people think in New York, they think of the city, obviously. We're actually about 5 hours from the city. So we're very far. But
Okay.
so we just moved on to our property and we've kind of hit the ground running here. It's just my husband and I, and we both work full time, and we have animals at our house and have been working on growing our garden. And we live about 3 miles from my family and about half an hour from his family, so not super far. And neither of us grew up on a farm, so this is all new to both of us. So it's
Okay.
a lot of learning as we go.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about the culture of your community and what is the population there? And if you could kind of paint a picture of what that looks like.
Yeah, sure. So I graduated with 54 kids. I think we were the smallest class in like 20 years. But our town that we live in is like 2,000 people. We're about a couple miles outside of the village. It's pretty rural. There's a lot of farmland around us, which I actually work on dairy farms. And so farming is very big in this area. We have like a couple, I mean, we have a bigger city. It's about 20 minutes from here, and then Syracuse is our next biggest city, and that's about half an hour. So, I mean, we're not way out in the boonies, but we're not super close to everything either.
Yeah, pretty rural. What did you say the population is about?
I believe my village is 2 or 3,000 people. Is like the town that we're in is about that big.
Okay. What would you say would be your greatest inspiration for your homesteading lifestyle? And what does actual homesteading mean to you? Homesteading means so many different things to different people. So, like, what does it mean to you?
So I'll back up and so I originally started talking about homesteading. So like ever since I could talk, I talked about animals. Like I wanted animals, and my parents actually owned a restaurant for 18 years. So they couldn't raise animals and run a restaurant at the same time, which like looking back now, I completely understand that. But I've always wanted animals. So then when I graduated college, I started looking into, okay, I can actually buy my own animals now. And then I thought, well, if I'm getting animals, they might as well have a purpose. I can't just have all these pets running around on my property.
Right.
So that's when I really started looking into like homesteading and like my animals having a purpose and like providing for our family. And so that was probably, I really started getting big into it probably about 4 years ago, like studying. I have my own like little personal homesteading library, basically of just books. And so just reading books, reading blogs online. And basically, the whole point of it is I want to be able to provide food and like vegetables and fruits and grow as much and be as basically self-sustainable as possible.
Yeah. Yep. I think most of us have a library of books and spend many, many hours on YouTube and trying to self-educate because there's really not, a program to say, hey, let's take this program and figure out how we learn to live this pioneering lifestyle. So
Yeah, exactly.
you had told me before that there's many Mennonites that live in your community. If you can share with the viewers what the culture of the Mennonite is and how they helped you in your endeavor for homesteading.
Yeah, so Mennonites, I mean, if you don't have them in your area, they're kind of related to the Amish a little bit. So the Amish don't have any electricity; they ride horse and buggy. But the Mennonites actually, they drive, they use machinery, they have electricity. I don't believe they have like TVs in their houses or radios. So basically, their life revolves around God and like basically living a simple life and providing as much as they can for their families. So we have a lot of them kind of in our area here, and they've been the ones that have been very helpful for me. Cause I mean, a lot of what they do is what I kind of strive for, like the simple, like heritage life. So there's been a lot of times where like I really need like almost like a mentor, because like I said, I have no idea what I'm doing half the time. And so the Mennonites have been the ones that are so willing to help me. Like they're really excited for me growing my own food, canning. They call me when they have, like, my neighbor's a Mennonite. She's so cute. She's older. Her kids have moved out and everything. So she called me, was like, hey, I cut my corn stalks down. You want to feed them to your pigs? Like we barter back and forth. And then another Mennonite family actually kind of bartered with me, and we just butchered meat chickens with them. They showed me how to butcher meat chickens because I've never done it before. So it was the mom, and then two of her boys and me, and we butchered 40, or I think it was 37 meat birds in like an hour and a half. So they showed me how to do it, and now I feel like I've been doing it my entire life. And their community is just so giving, and they're very nurturing to each other, and it's all about, I mean, it's very God-based, so it's all about focusing on God and helping each other in the life that they're in.
That's, that's really wonderful, and how instrumental they've been in your life. I mean, I wish I had a mentor, someone like that when I started out. So Dee, what do you do for work, and like, what does your husband do? I see you on Instagram all the time, and you post things, and you're so busy all the time. I don't know how you handle all the work you have on the farm and work full time, both of you. It's amazing for me to watch you.
It's busy. So I work as a sales rep at a dairy equipment company. So I actually travel around the state's dairy farms all day. So it's something different every day. And I mean, I'm working with farmers all day. And actually, I had a lot of people help me through that avenue too. They're a little bit more industrialized, bigger farms. But I mean, you can still talk stuff. Like some of them grew up, milking a couple cows in a tie stall type of thing. So some of them have had a background in like smaller farms, homesteading type lifestyle. So basically I'm on farms. I normally leave at 7 o'clock, and I mean, I can get home anytime between like 3 and like 7. So it depends. Every day is different. I don't know what's going to happen that day. I don't know where I'm going to go most of the time during the day. So it's different, but it's so cool seeing. I like going across the state, meeting farmers across the state, and I really have a passion for the dairy industry. So I've been in the dairy industry now for about 4 or 5 years. So I really have a passion for that, and it's a fun job to meet different people and be on farms every day. And my husband is actually a technician for a Polaris Can-Am dealership. So he works on ATVs and snowmobiles. So he works from 9 to 6 every day. So we kind of divide and conquer it on some things. Like some days if I'm heading in, like the other day I had to leave here at like 6 a.m. So like he took care of the chores for the morning. Our pigs are gone and our meat birds are gone. So right now we just have our laying birds and a couple ducks and a couple geese right now. So it's slowed way down. But
nice
when it's busy, and when it's busy, we kind of divide and conquer. So we figure it out, but it's running a lot of the time.
One of the things that you were telling me about before with your job is with some of the equipment that you sell or represent. Can you share a little bit about that? I found it really interesting about the equipment that you work with.
Yeah, so I kind of sell everything from like chemicals to clean the milk lines, milking parlors, and then what they've been training me on a lot, which is people have followed me on Instagram, see that I was in Chicago a couple times for training, and then Jason took care of the homestead by himself, and people loved his Instagram videos on there. But so they've actually been training me on, they have cow monitoring systems on farms. So basically these cows, every cow on the farm wears a pedometer, and the pedometer takes all this information of the cow and then dumps it onto a computer. So the computer will say, hey, cow number 2345 has walked way more than normal today, which basically means she's in heat because she's walking around, she's mounting cows. And then the computer shows a flag on her. So basically the dairy farmer will go to his computer and he'll have a list saying, here's all the cows that are in heat, and here's the cows you need to breed today. It's like computers and dairy cows. So it's like technology and cows, and I love all that. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, the industry is really changing, and that's
Mm-hmm.
so beneficial for the farmers. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. Um, One thing I wanted to ask, and you had mentioned about how the Mennonites and how their relationships are, and how God is so present in their life, and like number one. And I asked you before, how does spirituality and faith play into your life? So if you would share with the viewers that
Yeah.
topic.
So, I've been a believer my whole life. I think when I was like 6 or 5, I begged my mom to go to church, and like we had never gone to church before. And like my parents grew up going to church, but we begged to go to church at 5 or 6 years old, and we've been going to church ever since. I did a couple mission trips down in the Dominican Republic, actually, which those are, if you ever have the chance to go to a third world country, it is very eye-opening. And especially going down to, like, I speak Spanish a little bit too. So going down and communicating with people about our God in their native language is just, it's mind blowing. And it's cool because then you think like our God doesn't just speak English. But I think that God is, it's hard for me to understand people that homestead that aren't God based, because you see him in everything. I mean, you wake up in the morning and you go outside and the sun is shining and your rooster's crowing and it is just breathtaking. And you're like, this is a world that our God has made. I mean, and then there's times where you're praying to God saying, God, please help me save this animal. Like, I don't know what's going on. Help me find wisdom. But at the same time, like, God's also using a lot of this homesteading to teach us things. He's teaching us patience. He's teaching us faith. Trying to trust in him, knowing that, you know, if my garden doesn't do super good this year, then he's teaching me for years on. So a lot of it's just, you know, letting go and letting God, trusting in him, and he's bringing us on this journey for a reason. So you're just along with the ride and trusting in him.
Yeah, that's for sure. Did you have a garden last year?
I didn't. This year is my first garden.
Okay. So what will you be planning on growing this year? Or this in the spring?
Yeah, so we actually did a back to eating gardening method for
So
a
when
couple
you
of
say
reasons.
last year, so this summer that just passed.
Yeah, so this summer that just passed was my first garden.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's what I meant.
And
This
yeah,
growing season.
so we did the back to eating gardening method, and that's actually very God-based too. If you ever had the chance to look into it, basically, I'm awful. I don't know the guy's name. I think it's Paul something, but he did a movie on it basically, and he said, you know, I was tilling the ground and nothing was growing, and so I went to the woods and I prayed, like, God, why is my garden growing? And he said, and I opened my eyes and I looked in the woods and I see these trees that are flourishing, and basically he's like, the ground in here has a layer of compost directly on top of the ground, and then on top of that there's mulch, and the mulch is covering the ground and it's keeping it moist and it's protecting it from the elements. So basically what he does is same thing with a garden. So our garden was a yard, so we laid down a layer of cardboard, and then we put about 4 to 6 inches of compost on top of that, and then we did about 2 inches of a wood mulch on top of that. So we didn't want to do a till, mostly because I didn't want to have to get in there and aerate the ground all the time, because I don't think that that's 100% like healthy for it. And I wanted to keep the organic matter intact in there. And it like blew my mind this year with how well, especially with our garden being, it was literally like a grassy yard before. And like typically, number one, your first garden's never going to be super good because your soil isn't super healthy for it. But it was a yard, and it was our first garden, and it did way better than I ever thought it would have.
And every year that will get better too, as you add
exactly.
more organic material to it.
So that's why I'm excited, because I'm like, if it did that good the first year, what's it going to do in the next coming years?
And how many inches would you say that you laid on top of the cardboard of, and what type of compost was there a certain type of compost or just?
So I actually got compost from a dairy farm. So
okay.
I'm going to teach you a little bit more about the dairy industry. So they, some dairy farms has what's called a digester. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
I did not, no.
So what it does is this digester takes in the manure. So they bring the manure into the digester, and this digester puts so much pressure on the manure that it separates the gas and it separates the solids. So basically the gas comes out of the manure, and the digester collects that gas and turns it into energy for the farm. And then the byproduct from that process is the manure solids. And so a lot of farms use those manure solids as bedding. It basically almost looks like a soft wood chips almost. It's like basically the fiber in the poop. And so I went to a farm and I said, hey, can I use some of that manure solids for my garden? And we loaded up a couple dump trucks and we brought them home. And so we did about 4 to 6 inches across the garden. It was right around in there, but it's basically composted already because it goes through that process of the such high pressure that it doesn't have to sit, like it's not too hot for gardens. So it like is already composted basically.
So is there a heat processing or an age, like, because usually with compost you got the heat and the age, or one or the other, mostly the aging of it.
Yeah, so
With
it
this
didn't
process.
Yeah, it didn't age at all. The pressure, I believe, also creates heat because of putting all the pressure on it. It doesn't, so like typically good compost doesn't smell like anything, right? It just
Right.
smells like organic matter. This did have like a manure-y smell to it. And it was pretty warm when we spread it out too. But after talking to a bunch of people, and then after how well my garden did this year, like it's cold enough to put it right on there, not have to let it age or anything. Because I put it on right in the spring and I planted in it immediately.
Is there anybody else that uses that for gardening? Is it common knowledge or common practice to utilize that? And the reason I ask is I'm wondering about the bacteria count in it.
I don't know actually. I just
Okay.
know that I talked to a couple farmers and I said, I'm looking for compost, and a couple people were like, just find a farm with a digester. And I know that they do sell that actually to like commercial landscaping businesses, and that they use
must
it.
be good then. It must be,
Yeah.
it must be common practice then to use it. So,
Mm-hmm.
well, that's pretty good. That's a good resource for you. Couple other things, we're going to get ready to wrap up, but I wanted to ask you about, I know we had planned to meet at the HOA and I had an unfortunate circumstance and I couldn't make it, and you made it and I didn't, and I was bummed, and I'm glad you made it. So tell me what your favorite event was at the HOA. Or your favorite class, or?
I mean, my most favorite part probably was just meeting so many people that I talk to every day on Instagram. I had like a bunch of people come up and just give me a big hug, and they're like, I follow you on Instagram. I love watching you. And then like I finally got to meet them in person. Like my friend Nellie, she's a little rustic baker. So she's actually in New York. She's in the city actually, but she has a homestead too that's a couple hours away from the city. And so like she actually helped me and sent me a huge packet full of seeds this past spring to help me get going with my garden. So like I actually got to meet her and give her a hug and actually thank her for that, because I was so blessed to have her send that to me. I really enjoyed hearing Joe's salad, and everybody loves him. I got to meet Jess from Roots and Refuge. I got to have Jill Winger from the Prairie Homestead. She signed my cookbook, and I was so excited about that. Some of the classes we took a preserving class. We took a trying to save money and budget by doing it yourself on your homestead, building things yourself. We took a 1 year of food production for your family class. We took an emergency preparedness class. So it was a bunch of stuff across the board, and it was so much fun. I can't wait to go again next year.
Me neither. And hopefully we get to meet each other.
Yes.
If you could inform somebody that's on the fence about homesteading, would you recommend the HOA to them? Or would you think it's too advanced, or do you think it's good for beginners, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think there's classes that are better for beginners, and then there's classes that are better for advanced. So like Joe Saladin actually talked about moving your homestead from like just a homestead to like making money on it. Like that's going to be a little bit too much for like beginner people. But I did meet a couple people that were like beginners, didn't have a homestead yet. So there are classes there, like the preserving and canning one. That one would have been perfect for people just finding out like, hey, what are my options for preserving my food over winter time? So you would just choose classes, I think, that would work best for people. And I mean, the the coolest thing there is you're surrounded by hundreds of people that love and believe in the same thing you do. So you're like, I'm not alone on this earth believing in these things.
That's my favorite thing about the whole homesteading community is everybody is so nurturing. They come to
Mm-hmm.
you with open arms, willing to teach. I adore this community. I really do. So
Yeah.
with that, last thing before we close, if you can sum up in one word what homesteading has meant to you or means to you, what would that word be?
I probably use the word blessed because it's just, we're so blessed by God and being able to learn how to do this and provide for our family. Like, I mean, we have 2 freezers full of meat that we grew and raised ourselves downstairs. We have freezers full of vegetables that we did by ourselves this year downstairs. So like, it is just, it's so blessed to be able to live this life and to like provide for our family and know what goes into our food and take care of the animals that we love. And so that's, I probably use blessed.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100%. It's a great lifestyle. Dee, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I appreciate it. It was great to interview you. And like I said, I'll see you next year for sure. This time for sure, I'm going to be there no matter what. So,
No matter what.
all right. You have a great night.
Thanks, Gloria.
All right. Bye-bye.